My name is Charlotte Hayes. I'm 66 years old and have been retired for just under 2 years. I receive about $2,500 a month in Social Security benefits. In a small town in Delaware, that's enough to get by. So long as I watch every penny, it covers my needs just fine. My husband passed away young. After my son Jason got married, it's just been me living alone in this old house, keeping it warm with memories. At my age, isn't that what life is supposed to be about? Family gathered around, laughter echoing through the halls. With Christmas around the corner, Jason called to say he wanted me to spend the holiday with them this year. At that moment, my heart lit up like someone had handed me a steaming cup of hot cocoa in the dead of winter, filling me with a warmth so deep it reached my bones. The minute we hung up, I got to work. I pulled an old suitcase out from the back of the closet, wiping it down again and again until it was clean enough to catch a faint reflection. The new sweater I had set aside for the holidays was already folded neatly, waiting. One by one, I packed it along with a few other things. The smoked bacon rolls Jason loved as a boy, Amanda's favorite local honey, and some homemade preserves, carefully making sure I forgot nothing. As I packed, my fingers brushed over an old yellowed photograph. Jason was just a teenager in that picture, grinning wide with his bright smile and those two little front teeth poking out. Beside him stood a younger me, thick black hair, a confident smile, eyes brimming with a fierce, unstoppable hope for life. Decades had slipped by in a blink. All my life I poured everything into this family, into Jason. When he was little, I worked shifts at the textile mill, graveyard shifts, swing shifts, coming home so bone-tired I could barely stand just to make sure he had a better life. When the mill shut down, I peddled wares at flea markets, took odd jobs, whatever it took. I fought tooth and nail to put Jason through college, to set him up with a good start in life. Only when he was settled, married, and steady did I finally feel like I could breathe. Retirement has been plain like a glass of water. Only when I saw Jason and his family did life taste a little sweeter. I just didn't know that sweet sip was already laced with poison. When I arrived at Jason's apartment, the elevator doors slid open and Amanda was already standing there, waiting. She beamed and rushed over. "Charlotte, you're finally here. It's freezing outside, come on in." She took my suitcase with cheerful hands, bustling around. Sit down, I'll get you some hot tea to warm up." Jason poked his head out of the study, flashing a tired smile. "Hey, Mom." He looked worn down, dark circles under his eyes. "End of year's always crazy. Been working non-stop," he explained. I nodded, a flicker of worry in my chest. "You've only got one body, honey. Don't run it into the ground." Amanda quickly returned with a steaming cup of tea, the cozy scent filling the living room. The heat from the radiators wrapped around me. It felt worlds away from the chill of my own little house. Amanda whisked my suitcase into the guest room and bustled off to start dinner. The meal she whipped up was rich and impressive. Roasted beef fragrant and juicy, steamed cod tender and buttery, a handful of bright, refreshing side dishes. Her cooking had truly gotten better. I couldn't help but praise her, and she laughed, eyes crinkling. "I'm so glad you like it. You should come by more often. I'll cook for you every day." But for all her easy smiles, there was a note of something, just a little too polished, a little too eager. She kept heaping food onto my plate, fussing over me with the kind of care that was almost too flawless, like a brand new jacket that fits wrong in the shoulders. Close but not quite right. Jason, meanwhile, shoveled food into his mouth without much thought, eyes flickering to his phone again and again, as if something was pulling at him. The table felt lively on the surface, but underneath, it was like a sliver of bone caught in my throat. Impossible to swallow, impossible to spit out. The next morning, Amanda's parents arrived. The moment they walked in, Patricia swept Amanda into a big, showy hug. The two of them chattered away, their high-pitched laughter filling the living room, like the rest of us had simply vanished. I stood to the side, invisible. For a moment I could almost feel myself fading into the wallpaper. Robert was more restrained. He shook my hand, exchanged a few polite words. Patricia had the air of someone used to sitting behind a big desk. Before she retired, she worked in a city government office, and it showed. She gave me a glance, her eyes flicking over my worn wool coat, the one I'd had for years, thick and sturdy, warm if a little outdated, and her mouth twitched in a way that wasn't quite a smile. To her, I must have looked shabby, out of place. The coat that had always made me feel prepared, proud even, now suddenly felt thin and tired under her gaze. Dinner carried a subtle tension. Jason and Robert exchanged bits of conversation about the latest financial news, while Amanda and her mother chatted animatedly about neighborhood gossip, supermarket discounts, and whose children had recently moved up a grade. I sat there quietly picking at my food, feeling like I didn't belong. Patricia's voice, sharp and carrying, soon steered the conversation. Robert and I pull in almost $15,000 a month between our pensions, she said, lifting her teacup with a practiced grace. Her eyes flickered toward me, quick in assessing. Our expenses are minimal, so life's been quite comfortable. Just last month we bought a little condo down in Miami. It's perfect for the winters, warm weather and clean air. She turned with a smile to Amanda. You two should start planning ahead. Housing prices are only going up. Better trade up to a bigger place now, especially before the babies come. Amanda nodded quickly. We're actually working on that, Mom. Then Patricia turned her gaze back to me, her tone dripping with false concern. And you, Charlotte, how's your health holding up? I heard from Amanda that your pension isn't all that much. Are you able to cover your day-to-day expenses? Her voice was light, but there was a glint in her eyes, a subtle but cutting judgment. I forced a composed smile, even as something tightened in my chest. I get about $2,500 a month. It's enough for my daily needs. My health is about the same, some old aches but nothing serious. Oh, $2,500. Patricia stretched out the words, her eyebrows lifting slightly, her voice full of a delicate, almost imperceptible pity. I picked up my teacup, hiding behind it, masking the sting and the pride that flared up inside me. It's only now at this age that I truly understand. In some people's eyes, your entire worth can be summed up by the numbers in your bank account. And mine didn't even qualify me for a polite nod in their world. After dinner, Jason called Robert into the study to consult about some investment matters, leaving Amanda and Patricia on the living room couch, half watching TV, half whispering to each other. I felt exhausted, not in my body but deep down where the ache settles and doesn't leave. I excused myself, saying I needed some rest, and retreated to the guest room. It was a small room but neat and bright. A small pot of ivy sat on the nightstand, its leaves lush and green, giving off a quiet, stubborn vitality. Yet inside me, everything felt heavy and stuck. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring out the window at the dull, gray sky, my mind drifting away. I thought about the winter Jason wanted those expensive basketball shoes, how I worked a week of overnight shifts in the warehouse just to afford them. I thought about his college years, when I sent every hard-earned dollar I could scrape together while living off stale bread and tap water. I thought about his wedding, when I emptied my savings and even borrowed from friends to help him put down the deposit for his first home. I've never done anything remarkable in my life. All I ever tried to do was make things a little easier for my son. I always thought that would be enough. But now, feels like it was never even close. I stayed in the guest room for a long while before finally getting up, needing some air. I eased the door open and was about to step out when I caught the sound of low voices drifting from the living room. It was Amanda and Patricia, speaking in hushed tones, soft, but clear as a bell in the stillness of the house. Mom, what can that old woman even do with $2,500 a month? She's still moving around now, but what happens when she gets sick? I'm supposed to drop everything and take care of her. Amanda's voice, tinged with thinly veiled irritation, pierced through me like a hammer blow. My foot froze mid-step, nailed to the floor by an invisible force. Exactly. I warned you about this, Patricia said coolly, her voice sharp and precise. That little pension of hers barely covers her own bills. If she falls ill, she'll be nothing but a burden on you. I held my breath, cold sweat soaking my palms. I tried to retreat quietly, but their words clawed at my ears, refusing to let me go. Why keep her around? Amanda muttered, her voice a low, bitter whisper that sliced straight into me. $2,500 a month wouldn't even cover a halfway decent home care nurse. Which is why, Patricia said with terrifying calm, you need to sort out the house while she's still lucid. Get it signed over to you and Jason before it's too late. The house. Amanda sounded hesitant, but there was a greedier note underneath. That place is old, but the location's good. We could probably sell it for $3, maybe $400,000. Exactly, Patricia urged, her voice seasoned with cold calculation. You need it in your hands. Otherwise, if she loses her mind and leaves it to someone else, you'll have no one to blame but yourself. And besides, Amanda added lightly. She's been coughing a lot lately. Looks pretty pale too. Who knows how much longer she'll even hold on. Who knows how much longer she'll even hold on. Those words cut across my heart like a blade, sharp and merciless. I felt the blood in my veins freeze solid. My limbs turned to ice. Even breathing hurt. Pain, rage, and a deep, gut-wrenching sense of betrayal surged through me, drowning me completely. I had always thought Amanda, despite her little pettiness, at least respected me as her mother-in-law. I never realized that, in her eyes, I was just a low-value liability, an aging burden to be managed, maybe even discarded when it became too much. All those smiles, those warm welcomes, the carefully prepared meals. It was all an act. And now I'd seen the script before the final scene. I bit down on my lips so hard the taste of blood flooded my mouth. Tears burned at the corners of my eyes, but I forced them back. I couldn't fall apart here. I couldn't let them see me break. I slipped back into the guest room, moving like a defeated soldier retreating from the battlefield. My chest felt ripped open, but somewhere deep down a painful clarity took hold. I couldn't stay here another minute. This house, with its warm tea and cozy rooms, had become a gilded prison. Without hesitation, I yanked open my suitcase and began stuffing my things inside, one by one. My movements were cold and mechanical, like I was burying the last scraps of my dignity. The new wool coat I had bought for the holiday. The smoked bacon rolls I had spent days preparing. The jar of homemade jam I had wrapped so carefully. Now they all seemed like cruel jokes mocking my foolish hopes. I fumbled for a pen on the nightstand and, with trembling hands, scribbled a short note. Neighbor Helen had an emergency. I went to help her. Don't worry. The handwriting was crooked and messy, a mirror of the chaos raging inside me. I took a deep breath, grabbed my suitcase and quietly cracked the door open. In the living room the TV still blared. Amanda and Patricia were deep in conversation, laughing softly, oblivious. Keeping my head down, I crossed to the door, slipped on my shoes and pulled the front door open without a sound. In less than 30 seconds I was outside. The wind slapped my face, raw and biting. But no amount of winter air could match the cold that had already settled deep inside me. I didn't look back. I gripped the handle of my suitcase and kept walking one step after another into the night. When I made it back to my little house, the sky had already sunk into complete darkness. I didn't bother turning on the lights. I just groped my way to the sofa and collapsed onto it, my body heavy and limp. The suitcase sat abandoned by the door, leaning against the wall like a stray dog no one wanted. The house was eerily silent, broken only by the occasional sweep of headlights cutting across the windows, casting fleeting pale shadows across the room. In the darkness I could hear the pounding of my own heart. And then, finally, the sobs I had been choking down all evening. Tears came in a rush, hot against my cold hands. For the first time in my life I felt utterly alone. Utterly abandoned. The family I thought I could lean on. The bond one had spent my life building. It had all been built on the fragile foundation of money and convenience. In their eyes, I wasn't even worth the trouble. Just an old woman with a meager $2,500 pension, a future burden to be offloaded as quickly and cleanly as possible. I don't know how long I cried. Long enough for the tears to dry. Long enough for my heart to grow cold. But I wasn't going to lie down and accept this. I couldn't. For once in my life I needed to live for myself. I lifted my head slowly, staring out at the endless stretch of night beyond the window. Maybe overhearing their conversation wasn't an accident. Maybe it was the universe giving me one last wake-up call. It was time. Time to reevaluate my life. Time to reclaim my future. I fumbled for the lamp next to the sofa and switched it on. The light wasn't strong, but it pushed back the darkness, illuminating the room. And somewhere deep inside me a tiny, stubborn light sparked back to life. The next morning my phone rang. It was Jason. His name flashed on the screen, familiar and heavy. I hesitated for a moment before answering. Mom, why did you leave so suddenly? Jason's voice was laced with worry and confusion. Amanda said you left a note, something about neighbor Helen having an emergency? I cleared my throat, steadying my voice. Yeah. Helen's husband had a sudden heart attack. She panicked and called me for help. It was a lie. And it sat like a stone in my chest, heavy and suffocating. Oh, is everything okay now? Jason asked. Yes, everything's fine now. They got him to the hospital. I continued spinning the lie, a sour taste creeping up the back of my throat. Good. Mom, please take care of yourself, okay? If anything comes up, you have to tell us. He paused, then added, I'll try to come by and visit in a few days. No need, I said quickly, my voice light but firm. You just focus on your work. I'm fine over here. After we hung up, I exhaled a long breath. But somehow the air felt even heavier. Not long after, Amanda called. Charlotte, why'd you leave without saying a word? We were so worried about you, she said, her voice dripping with concern, perfectly measured, perfectly sweet. But I could hear it. That tiny thread of relief in her tone, like someone who had just shrugged off an unwelcome burden. There was an emergency at home. It's been handled now, I said calmly. Oh, but you have to take care of yourself, okay? Promise you'll let us know if you ever need anything. Don't try to handle things all alone, she gushed, her words wrapping themselves around me like a net spun of careful lies. I murmured a few polite replies and hung up. Staring at the darkened screen in my hand, I let out a bitter, broken smile. The cruelest part of it all was knowing I had to keep playing along, finishing the performance they had so carefully staged, pretending everything was fine. Maybe that's what adulthood really is. Smiling through the bruises. Covering heartbreak with silence. 2 days after Valentine's Day, Jason finally came to see me. He sat stiffly on the sofa, fidgeting with his hands, looking like he was carrying something heavy he didn't know how to set down. Mom, that day, he began, his voice barely more than a whisper, did you hear anything? My heart tightened slightly, but my face remained calm, unmoved. Hear what? No, I said, my tone light and even. Jason stared at me for a long moment as if trying to read something hidden deep inside my eyes. I met his gaze steadily, outwardly serene, even as my heart bled silently inside my chest. Well, I couldn't tell him. Not now. If I exposed everything, it would only make things harder for him, and for me. There was no point. He finally dropped his gaze and after a long pause mumbled, Mom, sometimes Amanda says things she doesn't really mean. Please don't take it to heart. In the end, he still chose her. I nodded slightly, saying nothing more. The room fell into an awkward silence, broken only by the steady ticking of the old clock on the wall. Jason stayed for a little while longer, fussing about my health, reminding me to take my medicine before he stood and left. I watched from the window as he hurried down the steps and disappeared down the street, a small, lonely figure swallowed by the gray afternoon. There was sadness in me. Disappointment too. But above all, a familiar, weary acceptance. The son I had poured my life into would never truly understand me. After Jason left, the house returned to its usual empty quiet. I sat alone on the sofa, listening to the second hand of the clock tick by, each click a dull, echoing reminder of how hollow my days had become. I started to think seriously for the first time. What should life after retirement really look like? Grocery runs, kitchen chores, the occasional chess game or idle chat with old friends in the park. It was all so flat, so lukewarm, like a cup of water left out too long, neither hot nor cold, flavorless and forgettable. That night at Jason's house, the words I overheard had struck like a muffled thunderclap, tearing through the fog of my complacency. I couldn't live like this anymore. I stood up and began to sort through the old house I had lived in for most of my life. I opened dust-caked cabinets, pulling out piles of forgotten odds and ends. Piece by piece I sorted through them, throwing the useless into trash bags, carefully setting aside the ones that still meant something. Buried deep in an old wooden chest, I found relics from another life. Yellowed photo albums. One showed me in work clothes, smiling brightly on the factory floor. Another showed me and my late husband on our wedding day, him in a crisp suit, me in a simple white dress, shyly leaning into his side. And then there was Jason, chubby and rosy-cheeked, a little boy with a smile like sunshine. Tucked among the photos were certificates I hadn't seen in decades. Outstanding worker. Top technician. And then, an old membership card for the local photography club. I picked it up and gently blew the dust away, running my fingers over the faded gold lettering. And just like that, the memories flooded back. In my younger days, I had truly loved photography. Even when money was tight, I scrimped and saved for months to buy my first camera. A second-hand Canon E1. Wherever I went, that camera came with me. I even joined the city's photography association, learning tricks of the trade from the seasoned photographers there. Some of my photos had even made it into the factory's internal newsletters. But life got busier. Bills needed paying, Jason needed raising, and little by little photography slipped away. The camera was shoved into a corner somewhere, forgotten under a layer of dust. Thinking back now, those days of chasing light through a viewfinder were some of the purest, truest moments of my life. Hard, yes, but so real. So full. I set the old membership card down carefully, feeling a surge of something I hadn't felt in years. A flicker of excitement. Why couldn't I pick it up again? I still had time. I still had strength. I refused to let the rest of my life slip away silently, unnoticed. I ransacked the closet and, after some digging, finally unearthed my old Canon camera. I wiped it down with trembling hands, polishing the dust from the body. It was old, a relic, but still intact, still beautiful. In that moment, I made a decision. I would enroll in a photography course at the local community college. I would start over properly this time. My greatest enemy wasn't illness. It wasn't loneliness. It was surrender. And I was done surrendering. The next day, dressed in a clean, neatly pressed sweater, I stepped into the admissions office at the local community college. The admissions officer was warm and patient, helping me enroll in an introductory photography class. Seeing the words Photography 101 printed at the top of the registration form made my heart race with a mix of nerves and excitement. Just like the first time I ever collected a paycheck. Clutching my brand new student ID, I walked out of the building into a sun-drenched afternoon. The light wrapped around my shoulders like a blessing. In that moment, I could almost see the woman I used to be at 20. Camera in hand, eyes wide open to the whole world. Life at the community college turned out to be even richer than I had imagined. Most of my classmates were retirees like me, rediscovering parts of themselves they had left behind. Everyone was full of laughter, easy conversation, and stories that spilled out faster than we could keep up with. Our instructor, Mr. Peterson, was a retired news photographer with a sharp wit and endless tales. Every lesson was packed with humor and wisdom, and even his smallest anecdotes had us roaring with laughter. I threw myself into learning. And before long, I had found a group of kindred spirits. There was Martha, a former architect whose shots of building structures were breathtaking. Tom, a retired philosophy professor who had a passion for capturing street life and candid human moments. And Linda, an exuberant soul whose photos were always bursting with flowers and blue skies. We hit it off immediately and formed our own little photography group, giving it a playful name, the Golden Lens Club. Every weekend we ventured out together for photo walks. My old Canon was clunky compared to everyone's modern gear, but the black and white images it produced had a depth and soul that no new technology could replicate. Later, at Mr. Peterson's encouragement, I saved up a few months' worth of my pension and bought a beginner's digital SLR. I began learning post-processing techniques, diving into the world of light adjustments, cropping and color grading. Suddenly, my days were filled with purpose and joy. Studying lighting, framing shots, adjusting camera settings, tweaking the vibrancy of a photo. It felt like I had traveled back to a time when I was strong, alive, and full of energy. Where time used to drag by like a slow drip from a faucet, now I found myself wishing each day had 30 hours instead of 24. Not long after, the community center announced a photography exhibition titled, Living Our Best Lives. Our Golden Lens Club submitted a few pieces for it. To my amazement, one of my photos, Sunset on Main Street, won second place. The shot captured a quiet small-town street bathed in golden twilight, with an old man sitting peacefully on his porch, a pipe resting between his teeth, utterly at ease with the world. That old man was Walter Helen's husband, sitting right outside their house on Main Street. After the exhibit, the local newspaper even did a feature on me, complete with a picture and a headline that read, Retired worker rediscovers her passion through the lens. Holding that newspaper in my hands, seeing my name and my photo in print, a deep, indescribable pride welled up inside me. It turned out there are countless ways to live out your later years. Just like in photography, change your perspective and the whole landscape transforms. I was no longer someone's burden, someone's afterthought. I was the main character in my own life. Somehow, Jason got his hands on that newspaper article and showed up at my house not long after. He had the paper clutched in his hand, his face lit up with a mixture of surprise and what almost looked like disbelief and pride. "Mom, you're amazing. You really kept this hidden, winning an award and everything." He laughed, half joking, but the genuine admiration in his eyes was impossible to miss. "Oh, it's nothing. I said, pretending to be modest, though inside my heart was doing cartwheels. Jason studied me carefully for a moment. I swear you look different, he said. You seem brighter. You've got this energy about you. For the first time I could feel it. His gaze had shifted. It wasn't the polite, dutiful concern he used to offer. It was real respect. Something warmer. Something that filled my heart with a soft, quiet joy. A few days later, Amanda called. We hadn't been chatting long when she casually slipped in. So, Charlotte, I heard you're getting pretty serious about photography? Even winning awards? Those cameras must be pretty expensive, huh? I caught the flicker behind her cheerful tone right away. She wasn't just making conversation. She was fishing, worried perhaps that I was burning through my savings. I smiled, keeping my voice light. Oh, it's not a big deal. Just a little hobby. I've been learning about small investments too, picking up a bit of extra spending money for gear. I didn't mention what kind of investments or how much I had made. I left her guessing. There was a slight pause on the other end of the line, almost imperceptible, before Amanda's voice grew even warmer. Wow, that's amazing. You're really living your best life, Charlotte. Just take care of yourself, okay? Don't overdo it. After we hung up, I smiled to myself. Funny, isn't it? The less you seek validation, the more cautiously others start approaching you. That's human nature for you. The ones you lean on will take you for granted. But the ones who stand on their own feet make others uneasy. As time went on, my little photography hobby started to gain momentum. I began uploading my landscape and street photos to an online photography platform. At first it was just for fun. But slowly, messages trickled in. People asking to buy the rights to my photos for websites, magazines, or cafe decor. On a friend's suggestion, I opened a small online store selling prints of my work. At first I treated it like a side project. But to my amazement, business started to pick up. Some of my photos ended up gracing the covers of small press books. Some were bought by independent coffee shops to decorate their walls. Others were purchased by individuals for home decor. After deducting platform fees and printing costs, I was bringing in an extra $300 to $400 a month. Not a fortune, but to me it meant everything. It wasn't about the money itself. It was about proving that I could still create value on my own terms in my own way. Word of my little success story eventually trickled back to Amanda through one of her friends. After that, her attitude did a complete about-face. All of a sudden, Amanda was calling me every few days, checking in with a sweetness that bordered on overkill. Charlotte, are you free this weekend? Come over for dinner. I'm making beef stew. Charlotte, it's getting chilly. I bought you a new sweater. When can you come pick it up? Her enthusiasm was almost suffocating, and I knew exactly what fueled it. I declined most of her invitations with a polite smile. Amanda, that's so sweet, but I'm heading out with my photography group this weekend. I really don't need a new sweater. Maybe you can give it to your mom instead. Thanks for thinking of me. I've been pretty busy lately, but I'm taking good care of myself. I told her about my upcoming photography exhibitions. About the long trips I was planning with my Golden Lens friends. About how packed and exciting my days had become. I wasn't holding a grudge. I just had no intention of returning to a relationship built on pretense and convenience. Once you see people clearly, it's easier to let go. I no longer needed other people's approval to measure my worth. The world likes to define wealth in numbers. But I learned something far more precious. True wealth is freedom. Especially the kind of freedom that comes from living unshackled by guilt, obligation, or anyone else's expectations. My photography journey was gaining more and more momentum. At one exhibition, a locally well-known photographer happened to see my work. He couldn't stop praising my photo sunset on Main Street, saying it carried a rare kind of emotional honesty, warm, real, and rich with human tenderness. Thanks to his recommendation, I was invited to showcase my work at the upcoming City Arts Festival. It was an honor beyond anything I had ever imagined. I carefully selected 5 of my best pieces, re-edited them, printed them, and had them framed. On opening day, I wore a brand new gray-blue trench coat, my exhibitor badge pinned proudly to my chest. Standing in front of my photos, I felt a cocktail of nerves and pride stirring inside me. The exhibition hall bustled with visitors. I watched, heart pounding, as people paused before my photographs, studying them, whispering to one another. A few young people even pulled out their phones to snap pictures, focusing carefully, almost reverently. The feeling of being truly seen, truly acknowledged, was overwhelming and beautiful. For a moment it was as if I were 30 again. Out of the corner of my eye, I spotted two familiar figures. Jason and Amanda. They hovered at the edge of the crowd, staring at my photos, then glancing toward me. Their faces were an open book. Surprise, disbelief, and something harder to disguise. Awkwardness, maybe even a hint of regret. Amanda inhaled sharply, then pasted a bright smile on her face and marched over. "Charlotte, congratulations. Your work is amazing, absolutely professional level," she gushed, her voice a little too loud, her expression a little too tight, emotions flickering behind her eyes like a storm she couldn't quite suppress. Jason followed, giving me a light pat on the shoulder. "Mom, seriously. I had no idea you were this good." I nodded calmly. "Thank you." Inside I felt nothing but stillness. The great irony of life. The moment you no longer crave someone's approval is when they scramble to offer it. But by then their applause means nothing. After the exhibition, Jason and Amanda insisted on taking me out to dinner to celebrate. I let them. We ended up at a cozy little Italian restaurant nearby, tucked into a private room. The table was covered with rich, colorful dishes, the atmosphere forced into a kind of strained cheerfulness. Jason kept topping off my glass, showering me with compliments. Amanda wore a dazzling smile, piling food onto my plate, fussing over me with a warmth that was just a touch too eager. Beneath the surface, I could see it clear as day. This dinner wasn't just a celebration. It was a setup. Sure enough, after the third glass of wine and the fifth course, Jason finally put down his cup and spoke, feigning casualness. "Mom, so Amanda and I have been house hunting lately." I nodded lightly, waiting for the real reason. "This apartment's getting a little cramped," he continued. "Especially if we think about starting a family. We found a place, 3 bedrooms, great location, really perfect. But we're just a little short on the down payment." He shot Amanda a quick glance. Amanda leaned in immediately, voice syrupy sweet. "Charlotte, we thought since your photography's been going so well, winning awards, selling pieces and all, maybe you could, help us out a little?" Her eyes sparkled with expectation, barely hiding the urgency underneath. In the end it was the same old dance. They wanted money. I smiled inwardly. What a predictable routine. I set my utensils down slowly, dabbed my mouth with a napkin and looked up at them, perfectly calm. "Buying a new house sounds wonderful," I said evenly, as if commenting on the weather. "But I'm afraid I won't be much help." Amanda's smile faltered. Her voice sharpened slightly. "Why not?" "Well," I said, gently tapping the edge of my water glass, "photography isn't exactly a cheap hobby. New equipment, travel expenses for shoots. And lately I've been pooling funds with a few friends to open a small photography studio. It's going to take quite a bit of upfront investment." I let that sink in before delivering the final blow, still smiling. "Plus, I'm planning a big trip to Alaska later this year, to photograph the Northern Lights. Every dollar's already spoken for." Jason bowed his head, pretending to sip his tea. Amanda's face stiffened, the disappointment and barely concealed frustration flickering across her features. "How interesting. When you finally carve out your own world." They are left standing outside, knocking at the door in vain. The so-called celebration dinner ended exactly as I expected. Not with warmth, but with a quiet, strained goodbye. A few days later, an unexpected call came through. Patricia, Amanda's mother. Her voice oozed with enthusiasm, laying on the compliments so thick they practically dripped through the receiver. She called me inspiring, full of hidden talents, and insisted that I was living life to the fullest. Then came the real reason for her call. "Charlotte, are you free sometime soon? Why don't you come over for tea? We can catch up." Every instinct in me went on high alert. Till I agreed. I was curious, what were they really up to? When I arrived at her house, Patricia greeted me like I was some long-lost celebrity. Tea flowed endlessly, a spread of imported pastries covered the table, and the compliments kept pouring out like a broken faucet. Robert, Amanda's father, sat stiffly to the side, looking like he wanted to disappear, forcing out the occasional awkward chuckle. After an exhausting round of small talk, Patricia finally dropped the act. She leaned in closer, dropping her voice to a sugary whisper. "Charlotte, there's something I wanted to mention. My son, Amanda's brother David, he's working on an amazing project right now. Huge potential. Really big. She lowered her voice even further. He just needs a little bit of startup capital. I smiled coldly to myself. There was. Finally. Patricia kept pressing, her voice syrupy and insistent. I mean, I know you've got a good eye for investments these days. And with your photography sales doing so well, why not get involved? It wouldn't take much, maybe 100,000. There'll be dividends by the end of the year, way easier than earning it photo by photo. The gleam in her eyes was unmistakable. She wasn't seeing me anymore. She was seeing a walking, talking ATM. I lifted my teacup, blew gently over the rim and said slowly, Patricia, thank you so much for thinking of me. But I'm afraid I can't help. Her smile froze. Why not? She asked, struggling to keep her tone light. To be honest, I said, setting my cup down carefully, my expression as earnest as hers was fake. I just partnered up with a few friends to open a photography studio. I pretty much cleaned out my savings. At the moment, I couldn't squeeze out a dime if I tried. Photography studio? Patricia blinked, clearly not expecting that. That's right, I said with a bright smile. We're just getting started. Crazy busy. Her expression soured slightly, but she forced another brittle smile and the subject was dropped. People reveal their true selves when they think you have something they need. When you're struggling, they look past you. When you shine, they scramble to put crowns on your head. This kind of cheap affection? I had long since learned to smile and politely decline. As for my little studio, it was barely off the ground, but we had already landed our first big contract. A travel company had fallen in love with our photography style and hired us to shoot a promotional campaign for their new Alaska Northern Lights tour. When the contract was signed and the advance payment hit the account, the whole office erupted like it was Christmas morning. It wasn't just a job. It was a dream I had tucked away decades ago finally coming true. I threw myself into preparations with the excitement of a kid before a school trip. Researching weather forecasts, upgrading gear, getting the lenses cleaned, there was a whole beautiful frenzy to it. When Jason found out I was heading to Alaska for an entire month, he called immediately. Mom? Alaska? For a month? Are you serious? At your age? It's freezing up there. You sure you can handle it? His voice was laced with concern, but beneath it there was something else. Something harder, sharper. I'm doing great, I said laughing. I'll be with the whole team. We'll look out for each other. But, a whole month? You're the backbone of that studio. And, all the travel expenses. Must cost a fortune. There was the real worry. He was scared I was investing too much in myself. Cutting off the backup plan he had quietly kept in his back pocket. I sighed internally but kept my voice cheerful. Sure, it's expensive. But this time the travel company's footing the bill. As for the studio, Tom and Linda can handle everything while I'm gone. Mom, maybe you should think about it a little more. No need, I interrupted him gently. The ticket's already booked. I spent my younger years tied down by mortgages, tuition bills, and endless responsibilities. Now it's my turn. I'm not missing another horizon. Jason went silent on the other end of the line. In our youth, survival was the priority. Crushed under loans, under duties we never questioned. But growing older taught me the real lesson. Freedom isn't something you're given. Something you earn. One hard, deliberate step at a time. Alaska turned out to be even more breathtaking than I had ever imagined. The auroras danced across the night sky, spilling waves of light like an artist flinging whole galaxies across a canvas. We, a ragtag band of aging photographers, hauled our heavy gear through sub-zero nights, trudging across frozen ground to capture every fleeting miracle of color. It was grueling work, bone-cold, exhausting, but my heart hadn't felt this alive in years. It was pure, unfiltered joy. Over the course of a month, we not only completed the shoot successfully, but our little studio also earned its first substantial paycheck. More importantly, on this trip I met someone who would change my life. Her name was Emily Sanchez. She was 2 years younger than me, another solo traveler chasing the northern lights. We met by chance at a small outdoor market in a sleepy town. A conversation sparked, and before long we realized we had far more in common than just photography. Emily had been a community college teacher before retiring. Her husband had passed away a few years ago, and her children had scattered to other states. She lived alone now, independent, spirited, and brimming with stories. We talked about photography, travel, life. And somewhere along the second half of the trip, we became inseparable, taking photos of each other, sharing meals, keeping an eye on one another. With Emily, everything felt easy, light. There were no hidden motives, no obligations. Just simple, genuine friendship. When the trip ended, she hugged me tightly and grinned. Charlotte, meeting you has been the best part of this whole adventure. When you're back on your feet, next stop, Iceland? The northern lights are even more spectacular there. Deal. I laughed without hesitation. When I got home, I stared at my growing bank balance, at the hundreds of breathtaking photos stored on my hard drive, at the silly selfies Emily and I had snapped together, and I felt a satisfaction deeper than words. Life after 60, it turned out, could be even more thrilling than the years that came before. Especially when you finally stopped wasting your time on people and things that didn't deserve you. Emily and I kept in touch, swapping photos, sharing editing tips, planning our Icelandic adventure. Life, it seemed, was finally moving forward. I was finally moving forward. But life, unpredictable as ever, threw me a curveball. One morning while I was browsing for new gear online, dizziness hit me like a wave. My right side went numb. My words slurred together. My heart sank. I dialed 911 immediately. At the hospital they confirmed it, a minor stroke. Thankfully, I got help quickly enough to avoid any major damage, but the doctors insisted I stay for observation for at least a week. Lying in that sterile hospital bed, under bright fluorescent lights with the stench of antiseptic thick in the air, a heavy sadness settled over me. Iceland would have to wait. Emily visited almost every day. She brought homemade soup, the latest photography magazines, and a warmth that cut through the chill of hospital walls. She even pitched in at the studio, making sure things kept running smoothly. Her kindness was simple, pure, and real, like sunlight spilling through a frosted window. Jason and Amanda came too. They were attentive, bustling around like the perfect caregivers. Jason ran errands, Amanda hovered by the bed, offering water, peeling fruit, fussing over me. Watching them, I felt a complicated tangle of emotions. I knew deep down, how much of their concern was genuine and how much was performance. A week later I was discharged. The doctors warned me to take it easy, to eat carefully, to avoid stress. On the day I came home, Amanda made her move. "Charlotte," she said brightly, "since you're just out of the hospital, we're really worried about you being alone. Why don't you come live with us? We can take care of you properly." Her eyes shone with what she clearly thought was convincing sincerity. But I could smell the real motive, sharp and sour underneath all the sweetness. Real care doesn't come with strings attached. Calculated filial piety always reeks. I sat back on the sofa, cradling the cup of soup Emily had brought me, letting its warmth seep through my fingers and into my heart. "Thank you, Amanda," I said with a gentle, steady smile. "But there's no need. I'm recovering well. I'm used to living alone, and I enjoy my freedom." I paused, then added casually, "Besides, Emily lives just a few blocks away. She can pop by if I ever need anything." I watched the flicker across Amanda's face. The smile that tightened just a little too quickly, the tiny flash of something sharp in her eyes. But she rallied fast, pasting on her concerned daughter-in-law mask again. Of course. It's just, accidents happen. We just want to be prepared." She hesitated, then threw in the real kicker, her voice feather-light, almost careless. "Charlotte, maybe it's time to think about setting up a will? Not for any bad reason, of course. Just to be safe. Better to have everything in place than to scramble later, right?" The fox couldn't hide its tail forever. I smiled sweetly, playing my role to perfection. "A will," I said, scratching my head like I was confused. "Oh, I don't really have much. Just this old house and a little pension. Enough to get by." Then I added breezily, "And I'm doing great now. The studio's keeping me busy. Maybe when things slow down a bit I'll think about it." Amanda's eyes darkened for just a heartbeat. A flash of raw frustration she couldn't quite conceal. Before she plastered that sugary smile back on her face. Sometimes, playing dumb is the sharpest armor an old woman can wear. After I was discharged from the hospital, Amanda's enthusiasm became almost absurd. Where she used to call occasionally, now she was showing up at my house every other day, arms loaded with organic fruits, supplements, and a syrupy smile. "Charlotte, how are you feeling lately? Anything you need, just say the word." She was warmer than any daughter could be. But her eyes kept wandering. sweeping around my living room, lingering on the shelves, the desk, the drawers. And her casual conversation was anything but casual. "Charlotte, your photography studio's doing great, right? What kind of big projects are you working on?" "Emily, she lives alone too, right? You two must see each other all the time. You know, Charlotte, maybe it's time to renovate this place. Imagine how nice it would look with a modern touch." Every question was dipped in honey, but carried a fine, sharp probe beneath the surface. I knew exactly what she was doing. Still, I smiled politely, kept my tone light, gave her nothing. But then one afternoon everything changed. I had gone to take a shower. Since I was still recovering, moving was slow, I took my time. When I came out, towel around my shoulders, I passed the study. And through the cracked door I saw her. Amanda standing at my desk, rifling through papers with the focus of a burglar. I crept closer, heart pounding. She was holding my bank statements, my insurance policies. For a second the world tilted. The cold that rushed through me was sharper than anything the Alaska wind had ever thrown at me. She had waited until I was vulnerable, literally naked and helpless, and gone snooping through my private documents. The fury that rose in me almost exploded right there. But I forced myself to stop. Not yet. Not now. If I confronted her, I would lose the advantage. Better to play it smarter. I cleared my throat loudly from the hallway, my footsteps slow and deliberate as I made my way toward my bedroom. I heard the frantic shuffle behind me, Amanda stuffing papers back into the drawer, scrambling to fix her face before she sauntered out like nothing had happened. "Oh, Charlotte, you're done already?" I didn't hear the water stop. I just let myself look around a bit while waiting. That smile. That fake, nauseating smile. It wasn't strangers you had to fear. It was the ones who wrapped their greed in the language of family. That night, after double-checking every lock on every window, I gathered every important document. Deed to the house, bank cards, insurance papers, trust agreements, and tucked them all into the small safe I had quietly installed months ago. A few days later, Emily came by. We sat in the kitchen sipping tea, the easy companionship warming me from the inside out. Halfway through, Emily hesitated, fidgeting with her cup. "Charlotte, there's something I've been debating whether to tell you." "Go ahead, Emily," I said gently. "No secrets between us." She bit her lip, then leaned closer. "A few days ago this strange woman came to my door, asking all kinds of questions about you. Really detailed stuff, your health, your income, whether you have kids, whether you're planning to remarry." A heavy dread settled in my stomach. "What did she look like?" I asked quietly. Emily described her. My heart sank. It had Amanda's fingerprints all over it. To be sure, I asked Tom, a former police clerk who now partnered with me at the studio, to dig around a little. It didn't take long for the truth to surface. Amanda had hired a private investigator. She'd ordered a full background check. On me, on my finances, even trying to dig into the lives of my business partners. That moment, whatever lingering hope I had left collapsed. In their eyes, I wasn't family. I was a living, breathing lottery ticket they hadn't cashed in yet. And strangely, after the wave of heartbreak and anger passed, I smiled. If they wanted to play games, I was more than ready to play. And this time I would be the one setting the rules. That day, while Amanda was at my house, I deliberately picked up the phone and, in a voice loud enough for the entire living room to hear, dialed my attorney, Mr. Miller. "Mr. Miller, could you come by my house tomorrow afternoon? I'd like to discuss revising my will. The sooner, the better." The moment the words left my mouth, I heard the sharp crash of a glass shattering from the living room. I smiled to myself. When family turns into scavengers, the best revenge is giving them sleepless nights. The next afternoon, right on schedule, Mr. Miller arrived. And, coincidentally, Amanda showed up too, this time carrying a basket full of fruit. When she saw the lawyer sitting in the living room, her smile stiffened like a mask pasted onto the wrong face. It was strained, brittle, almost laughable. I invited Mr. Miller to sit, and making sure Amanda could hear every word, I got straight to the point. "Mr. Miller," I said calmly, "I'd like to update my will. It's important to get everything in order before it's too late." I gave a theatrical sigh for effect, lowering my voice to a somber pitch. "Given my age and recent health issues, I think it's best to be very clear. There's the house, my savings, and my shares in the studio." Amanda sat on the edge of the sofa, peeling an apple with exaggerated care. But her ears were tuned in like a hawk. I've thought about it carefully, I continued, smiling just enough to twist the knife. I plan to leave half of my estate to the Los Angeles Photographers Association to establish a fund for elderly photographers who, like me, are still chasing beauty and passion later in life. The apple slipped from Amanda's hands and hit the floor with a heavy, sickening thud. Her face drained of color. Her lips quivered. Her wide, frantic eyes locked onto me like I had slapped her across the face. "Charlotte, you..." she stammered, unable to string a sentence together. I ignored her entirely, turning back to Mr. Miller to discuss the donation details as if Amanda wasn't even there. Mr. Miller nodded thoughtfully, jotting everything down without a flicker of emotion. When we finished and Mr. Miller left, Amanda stayed behind, frozen in the corner of the sofa, a hollow shell of her usual chirpy self. Finally she croaked out, "Charlotte, are you serious? Jason is your son." I looked at her, calm and unyielding. "I've thought it through very carefully," I said, my voice soft but unshakable. "Money is just money. I'd rather it leave behind something meaningful than turn into a bargaining chip for those who never truly cared." Amanda's face twisted, the fake cheer dissolving into something bitter and raw, but she didn't dare argue. That night I sat back on the sofa and pulled up the feed from the hidden camera I had quietly installed in Jason's house a few weeks earlier, pointed only at the living room. On screen, Amanda and Jason were arguing heatedly. Amanda flailed her arms in frustration, her voice shrill and broken. Jason sat slumped over, chain-smoking, his face a mask of despair. I watched them in silence, feeling no triumph. Only a sadness so deep it felt fossilized. The deepest pain in life isn't loneliness. It's realizing that even blood ties can curdle into a cold, transactional hostility. I knew then, this ugly charade needed to end. The next day I called Jason, Amanda, Patricia, and Robert, inviting them to dinner the coming weekend. There was hesitation, tight, wary voices over the phone, but in the end they all agreed. Saturday evening we met at a quiet restaurant. The private room was dimly lit, casting a soft glow that couldn't hide the tension at the table. Patricia's eyes darted nervously around. Amanda busied herself with her fork, pretending not to notice the way her hands shook. Jason sat stiff and grim, his jaw locked tight. Only Robert kept some semblance of composure, but even he couldn't mask the unease flickering behind his eyes. The dishes arrived untouched. The air thickened like wet concrete. I cleared my throat, slicing through the silence. "I invited you here to clear the air," I said calmly, my eyes sweeping over them before landing squarely on Amanda and Patricia. The room froze. Slowly, deliberately, I pulled a small black device out of my bag. A voice recorder. Every breath at the table seemed to hitch at once. I pressed play. "Mom, you know Charlotte only gets a couple thousand a month from retirement? That's barely enough for herself. If she gets sick we'll have to take care of her and honestly we just can't." "Exactly. I told you, we need to plan ahead. She's already a financial burden. Better to have her sign over the house now while her mind's still clear. And let's be honest, her health's not great. Might not be that long anyway." Amanda's and Patricia's voices rang out, loud and undeniable, every word landing like a slap across the room. This was the art of surviving betrayal. Not by enduring it, but by choosing the exact right moment to lay your cards on the table. The recording played on. Nobody spoke. Nobody dared. Amanda's face turned ghostly pale, her hands trembling as she gripped the edge of the table. Patricia sat wide-eyed, her fingers twisting the edge of the tablecloth, panic leaking from every pore. Jason stared at Amanda with a look of disbelief and barely contained rage. Robert sighed, his shoulders slumping in defeat as he closed his eyes to the train wreck unfolding before him. The truth was laid bare, and there would be no coming back from it. The recording finally stopped. I calmly switched off the device and looked around the table, my gaze steady, unflinching. "This recording," I said, my voice quiet but cutting through the room like a blade, "was captured during my New Year's visit to your home. I came with the simple hope of a family reunion. And instead this was what I heard." I paused, letting the words hang in the thick, frozen air. "So I left. Not because the neighbor had an emergency, but because my heart had already frozen over." Another pause. Then I spoke again, each word measured, deliberate. "These past few months I've thought long and hard. Is a person's worth really nothing more than the number in their bank account? Does living on a modest pension mean I deserve to be discarded, plotted against? I smiled, not bitter, not angry, but full of quiet, hardened clarity. I realized something. My value has never been up for anyone else to decide. And it certainly isn't diminished by your scorn. My voice was clear, steady, slicing through the thick, suffocating silence. And so, I continued, I have officially updated and notarized my will. All eyes locked onto me. My house will be donated after my passing to the community's senior housing program, providing shelter for elderly residents in need. My savings will be spent on my own care, on my health, on my travels, on ensuring that I live my remaining years with freedom and dignity. And the profits and assets from my photography studio will fund the creation of the Silver Dreams Fund through the Los Angeles Photographers Association, to support other senior creators who refuse to fade quietly into the background. The room was suffocatingly still. Amanda's face had drained to a sickly white. Patricia kept her head bowed, silent and ashamed. Jason's lips moved like he wanted to say something, anything, but in the end he just closed his eyes, the weight of it all breaking over him. Then the silence shattered. Robert slammed his hand down on the table with a loud, furious crack. "You too," he said, his voice tight with anger, trembling with disappointment. "You've gone too far. You've disgraced yourselves." He turned to me, his voice cracking, and bowed deeply. "Charlotte, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I should have done more. I should have stopped this. Please forgive us." Jason finally broke down. He grabbed my hand, sobbing openly, completely unguarded. "Mom, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Please just give me another chance." Amanda sat frozen, head bowed, a lifeless sculpture of regret. I stood still, looking at them, not with triumph, not with revenge, but with a deep, bone-weary sadness. The most fragile thing in the world isn't glass. It's family love, when placed under the grinding weight of greed. I turned to Jason, my voice gentle but immovable. "Jason, don't cry." He looked up at me, his face wet with tears. "Mother and son were blood. That can't be broken." I spoke softly. "But from today on we live separate lives. I don't need your love or respect anymore. And I won't offer unconditional sacrifice either. We're family, yes, but we are also individuals standing on our own." I let my eyes sweep the table, landing briefly on each face before settling into a soft, almost serene smile. "Actually, I've already made plans for next month. Senor. Heading north to chase the aurora, to capture the light and snow of the Arctic. My new life," I said simply, "is just beginning." No one spoke. No one dared. The dinner ended awkwardly, dissolving into silence. Jason insisted on driving me home. The whole way back he gripped the steering wheel tightly, opening his mouth several times, but never managing to get a word out. When we pulled up outside my house, I reached for the door handle. Before I could step out, he grabbed my arm. "Mom." His voice broke. Then he swung open his door and in one breath, dropped to his knees on the frozen driveway. "Mom, please. I'm begging you. Give me another chance." Watching him kneel there, shoulders shaking with sobs, something inside me twisted. After all, this was the boy I had raised with my own hands. I stepped toward him slowly, heart aching, and gently pulled him to his feet. "Jason," I said softly, placing a hand on his trembling shoulder. "Everyone makes mistakes. What matters isn't the apology in a moment of regret. It's the lifelong responsibility that comes after." I patted his shoulder, my voice calm, unyielding. "I didn't say I forgive you. And I didn't say I don't. Some fractures, no matter how much you mend them, never go back to what they were. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. And family love should never demand endless sacrifice." 1 year later, Emily, 2 old friends from our photography group, and I set off on a road trip across half the United States. We photographed Native American culture in the quiet streets of Santa Fe. We stood breathless before the vast, humbling peaks of the Rocky Mountains. We captured the wild fireworks and raw humanity of Mardi Gras in New Orleans. My photography skills had soared. Through my lens, it wasn't just landscapes I captured anymore. It was hearts, stories, the simple, wind-blown faces of everyday life. Our little photography studio had blossomed too, taking on documentary projects and community exhibitions. My retired life was more vivid, free, and fulfilling than any chapter one had lived before. Sometimes, Jason would fly out to whatever city I happened to be exploring just to spend a few days with me. There was more space between us now. But within that space there was a quiet, genuine respect. He no longer asked about money, no longer hinted at inheritance. He just listened. Listened to my travel tales, studied the photographs I brought back, smiled at my stories. As for Amanda, after that dinner she never appeared before me again. I heard whispers that her marriage to Jason had cracked wide open in the aftermath. Endless arguments, talk of divorce. But that was their journey now, not mine. I had long since let it go. One day, Emily wrote a short piece about my story and submitted it to a well-known magazine. The title was, "From an Invisible Mother to an Infinite Sky." To our surprise, the article exploded with attention. Hundreds of letters and messages poured in. People sharing their own struggles, their own lost years, their tentative, hopeful restarts. Media outlets began spotlighting senior independence, asking how society could truly offer respect and freedom to its elders. And I, a woman who had only ever wanted to quietly live her life after retirement, found myself, by some strange twist of fate, becoming a small, glowing symbol. Sometimes I received letters from fellow silver-haired wanderers, asking how to rebuild a life from scratch, how to love themselves again after years of being forgotten. I answered each one as best I could, telling them from the depths of my own experience, it's never too late. Your life can always begin again if you're willing. Right now, sunlight spills across my window. A warm cup of tea rests by my hand. Around me, the low hum of kindred spirits, fellow travelers, fills the air with laughter and light. And in my heart, there is only excitement for the next adventure. Looking back, all the hurt, the betrayals, the disappointments, they were nothing but stones scattered on the road. They didn't stop me. They built the very path beneath my feet. The final stretch of life is not about waiting. It's about blooming. My worth was never printed on a check. My worth was, and always will be, choosing to live fully, bravely, brilliantly as myself. This is my answer. For everyone still walking this road.